to give you an overview of where we're going today, we're going to start by talking a little bit about traditional publishing, the pros and cons. We're also going to talk about hybrid publishing, the pros and cons, and about self-publishing, the pros and cons. And I'm going to wrap up at the end with some important items that you need to know no matter what option you choose for publishing your book. And I want to start today with a poll. I'm curious to get your feedback on this one. And this is what the poll says: true or false? I value a book more if it is from a well-known traditional publisher. So I'm curious to see what you think about that. So we'll give you a few moments to answer the poll, and then we'll move on from there. I do actually have two polls, and then I have one poll that we want to get to at the end of today's session also. So thanks for your quick answers. And this is, some interesting data. I'm going to take a moment to share the results. It sounds like only 65% of you don't value a book more if it's from a well-known traditional publisher. And about a third of you say, yes, I value a book more if it's from a well-known traditional publisher. So thanks for sharing that insight. I've been in the book marketing business now for close to 9 years, and I definitely have seen across that 9 years a shift in people's openness to valuing books that aren't traditionally published. Whereas in the beginning of my work with authors, I did see a lot of bias show up where people prefer the approach of traditional publishing. So let's take a look at the second poll together. And I'd love to know what you use to evaluate the value of a book. So I'm going to launch a poll. You should be able to answer more than one answer on this poll. So I evaluate a book's value based on the publisher, the publishing approach, the cover, the topic, the content, the quality of the overall production, or the author. Which of these are most important to you in evaluating the relative value of the book? I want to say also that, in my years of working with authors, what I've seen is that there's a different right publishing approach for every book. And even with, authors that I've known, many authors will switch. They may use a traditional publisher first, then later they may self-publish. They may choose a hybrid publisher. One of the authors that we've been promoting for many years, Chip Bell, in the time that I've worked with him, he's made all three selections for his books. He has traditionally published with Barrett Kohler Publishers several times in the time I've supported him. He's chosen a hybrid publisher several times in the time I've supported him, and he has also self-published a book during the years that we've worked together. So, every book, potentially there's a different decision that you may want to make about how to publish. All right, so I'm going to close up this poll. Thanks to you for your feedback on this. It looks like most of you are seeing the content as the most important part of what makes a book valuable. It looks like close second is the author. So you will choose a book because of the author. The topic is also important and of lesser value, but still 27% of you look at the overall production quality of the book. So thank you for sharing that, and really interesting feedback. So as we get started today, I want to talk a little bit about the pros and cons first of traditional publishing. And if you have any particular ideas about what you think might be a pro or con of traditional publishing, I'd love to see that in the chat as well. I'm going to see if I can manage the chat and the slides at the same time. So this is an example of a few of the traditionally published books that my team and I have supported over the years. We tend to support a lot of authors who choose to publish with Barrett Kohler Publishers. BK is an independent publisher based in Oakland, California, and a strong partner of ours. And so here's some books from Barrett Kohler. Shoot, I meant to move the slide. Here we go again, Aubrey. At any rate, I left the slide here. One of the values of traditional publishing that I'm most passionate about is the expanded distribution that traditional publishers can achieve for authors, including the opportunity for rights sales. And rights sales often include translation rights. So this picture is Jennifer Kahnweiler's book is the second one from the left. I think that's her introverted leader book, translated into some language. It looks like Spanish or Portuguese or something. And in the time that we've been working with authors who choose to traditionally publish, one of the most thrilling parts about traditional publishing is the fact that established publishers often have relationships and channels to sell rights, and like I mentioned, the translation rights. So let's take a look at a few other pros of traditional publishing. One is that when you traditionally publish a book, you typically are assigned a professional editor who works with you from conception of your ideas as you refine and have a proposal approved all the way through to the publication of the book. Also, you know, traditional publishers, this is what they do for a living. So they have professional processes that are designed to make the publication of your book as smooth and seamless as possible. As I mentioned previously, oftentimes partnering with a publisher means that you can get some enhanced distribution for your book. And this also is important if you're interested in having your book in a traditional brick and mortar bookstore. Now, it's not impossible if you choose some other publishing options for your book to be in a bookstore, but most of the time when we've been working with authors and they have shelf space in a store like a Barnes & Noble store, it's because their publisher has invested in the opportunity for the book to have shelf space, and it costs money for a book to have shelf space. So something to keep in mind. So another value of traditional publisher is that potential for rights sales that I previously mentioned. There is no upfront cost to the author. And so when you partner with a traditional publisher, you know, oftentimes, you know, obviously they're paying you money. Quite often when you have a traditional publisher, you get a cash advance on your royalties. So unlike hybrid publishing or self-publishing, where you have to have the money up front to produce your book, the publisher is taking the risk on you as an author and covers all the costs associated with producing your book and bringing it to market. So another value of traditional publishing is that you may get a cash advance on royalties. It's not an always thing, but it often is a possibility for you. And you get the social proof and credibility from partnering with a trusted brand. So I see a question from Dana. What are the chances of getting published with a cold submission to a publisher? Do they really read the manuscript? And you know, I'm not sure in terms of quantifying the chance of getting published, but we'll talk in a moment about the cons of seeking out traditional publishing. And one of the kind of downsides is that there is a pretty high barrier to entry where publishers are looking to make sure that betting on you is a good business decision. And so sometimes what's most important is being able to establish that you have a platform and an audience ready to buy your books. And so I might argue that the marketing plan for the book is maybe more important than the manuscript, at least as it relates to nonfiction. So Dana, if you can clarify whether or not you're talking about fiction or nonfiction. The other thing that people often assume, I think, as it relates to traditional publishing is that you have to have the manuscript ready. Most of the nonfiction publishers that we've had the pleasure of partnering with over the years are only looking for a completed proposal. And typically with that completed proposal, you have a sample chapter, but not an entire manuscript ready at that point. Okay, here's another one. If you are traditionally published, you may be positioning yourself for bigger media opportunities. Along the way, as we've been supporting authors, we have found that some media outlets are not interested in promoting or highlighting self-published books. So quickly to talk about some cons of traditional publishing. One is a long timeline, a long time to market. So most of the time, if you're looking for a traditional publisher, it's more of like an 18 to 24 month timeline. So if you have your book ready and you're raring to go and you want the book now, traditional publishing is not the right option. Now, when you partner with a traditional publisher, one of the downsides is that you do share the revenue with the publisher. And in most cases, the publisher keeps most of the royalties of the book. You may have a modest royalty that you are able to get. Also, contrary to what you might think, a traditional publisher is not really as involved in marketing as you might expect. You may give up some completed control in that creative control, in that obviously you have an editor who's going to be working with you on your book, and a designer designing a cover. And so there may be some places where you give up creative control, even as it relates to the title of your book, because most traditional publishers will do a title survey to be able to land on a title for your book. You may also give up some rights to your content. So if you choose to traditionally publish, you need to read your agreement, your contract carefully. And as I mentioned previously, there is a fairly high barrier to entry with traditional publishing, where those publishers are looking to ensure that you're going to sell enough books that they can make a profit on your work. So you need to have an established platform. And quite often, you need to have this lengthy proposal process in order to, get in the door with a traditional publisher. And for some prestigious publishing houses, you may be required to have an agent who then is pitching you to publishers. And again, if you hire an agent, then you're sharing that revenue with your agent also. All right, so pros and cons of traditional publishing. So I'm curious how those land with you and what you think. And we're going to move on and talk a little bit now about hybrid publishing. And before I dive in too much to hybrid publishing, what I would say is that if you're choosing to hybrid publish, you want to make sure that you vet your hybrid publisher carefully. There's a wide range of services that hybrid publishers offer, a wide range in their reputations. And so you definitely want to go in with your eyes open and evaluate carefully any hybrid publishing option that you would seek. But I thought I would share with you a few covers of some books that we've launched over the years where the author chose a hybrid publishing model. Not Done Yet is by an author that we've been supporting for many years, Bonnie Marcus, and it's published by Page Two Publishing, and Page Two is a phenomenally good high-end hybrid publisher. Sprinkles by Chip Bell was published by Greenleaf Publishing, which is another high-end hybrid publisher that we recommend. And then these other two books, Launching to Leading, Ken Rutsky, published with Morgan James, another hybrid publisher. I'm not sure I know the name of the publisher that Rod Santamassimo partnered with for his book, Knowing Isn't Doing, but that was also a hybrid published book. Nancy is asking the question, what are the consequences? Oh shoot, I lost the chat, hold on. What are the consequences of giving up rights to content? That question is likely deeper than I'm going to be able to dive into on this call. But every book contract is different. So you just want to make sure that you understand clearly in what ways you own and retain the rights to your content and in what ways the publisher or hybrid publisher owns the rights to your content. So let's talk pros and cons of the hybrid publishing model. Also, most often, if you partner with a hybrid publisher, you also have access to a professional team, and they've assembled people with various skills and abilities who will help you to bring your book to market. And as I said at the beginning of this section on hybrid publishing, you do want to vet any hybrid publisher carefully because there is a range of services available from them. Again, a hybrid publisher will support you through the publishing process, and you may get a lift from the publisher's brand or name. So Greenleaf Publishing, for example, they're based in Austin, Texas. They've had many Wall Street Journal, New York Times bestsellers. They have a great reputation. Greenleaf is a name that carries a lot of credibility. I feel the same about Page Two. And so that may be kind of an individual sensibility about the value of that publisher's brand or name, but some people think that a hybrid publisher's name is a boost to their book and their brand. So with hybrid publishing, one of the values is that you can invest in the specific support that you want or need. And most of the time, if you go to a hybrid publisher, you can pick and choose the support that you want and, control your budget in some ways. Hybrid publishing may have a shorter timeline than traditional publishing. Again, I mentioned that traditional publishing is typically an 18 to 24-month timeline. With hybrid publishing, you can shorten that some. Although, depending on the hybrid publisher, like on the high end, you may get slotted also into a publishing calendar, and it may be up to a year or longer. We have some clients right now who are working on a hybrid published book, and basically from the time they complete their manuscript until the time they launch, the publisher has told them it's a 9 to 10 month process of book production. So that is significantly shorter if you have a finished manuscript. So some hybrid publishers do have the opportunity that you can invest in expanded distribution. So for example, Page Two, which is one of the higher end hybrid publishers that I mentioned, you can buy airport promotions. Now, typically to get your book in an airport bookstore, you also invest in that as well, just like you invest in shelf space at a Barnes & Noble. But some hybrid publishers have access to this expanded distribution. And depending on the agreement with the publisher, if you choose hybrid publishing as your route, you may have the opportunity to retain more of the royalties from the book. And so again, that's something that you want to be careful to evaluate. And in many cases, you would likely retain the rights to your content in a hybrid publishing agreement. And again, you may have more creative control in the hybrid publishing model. So let's talk about some cons of hybrid publishing. The first one is that you invest in or pay for all the support for bringing your book to market upfront. And that can be anywhere from a few $1,000s up to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 on the high end of the hybrid publishing business model. So you may obviously still give up some royalties. I think in almost every case, hybrid publishers do retain some of the royalties. And again, I mentioned previously, there's a wide range in hybrid publishers' reputations. So in some cases, it may be meaningful. In other cases, it may not have as much value to you. And here's one possible downside. Some people call hybrid publishing vanity publishing. I think not so much as they used to, but that's something to be aware of. So I'm curious about your feedback related to these pros and cons of hybrid publishing. If you're aware of any others, would love to see those in the chat. Moving on to self-publishing, and these two book covers represent a couple of the books that my team and I have helped people bring to market through a purely self-publishing model. So in case you're curious, Weaving Influence is not a publisher. We do have some book production services available to people that we will talk about more toward the end of the hour. I actually think Denise DeStasi, who's the author of Louie's Little Legs, is on the call today, and she self-published Louie's Little Legs with some support from our team on book production. So as you can see, these self-published books have high production value, and you might not know if you saw them on a table of books. You wouldn't know if you had them on a table of books that they were self-published. So let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of self-publishing. So one pro of self-publishing is that you retain complete control and complete freedom and creative control when you are self-publishing your book. You can control your speed to market. So really the only limiting factor is your own time to get the book finished. And you maintain all rights and royalties, except of course the ones you have to pay to Amazon for listing your book. But after Amazon takes their cut, you retain all the rest. So that's a plus. You can also choose to find a partner or partners to support you in all the stages of the publishing process. And so, as the author who's self-publishing, you can choose someone to design the cover and someone to design the interior, or you can do it yourself if you know how. So you do have a lot of freedom and flexibility and potentially more leverage as it relates to managing the budget around self-publishing. So a few cons to self-publishing, that idea that you can select your own team and build your own team might be overwhelming to some authors. I don't think that's on my list though. All right, so in self-publishing, again, you do invest in or pay for all the support to bring your book to market up front. Now, some authors I know who have done self-publishing choose to use some creative ways to fund their projects, like crowdfunding or crowdsourcing. And so that is a possibility as well with either self-publishing or hybrid publishing. But in most cases, you do need some cash up front if you need help to bring your book to market in terms of the book production. So it could be overwhelming to source professionals for support in various areas unless you have a wide range of skills. And I have, met some authors who do completely do-it-yourself approach to publishing a book and learn how to produce the books themselves, which amazing if you could do that. So you may also face more challenge in attracting media attention if you have a self-published book. It really depends upon what the book is about or what kind of media attention you want to attract. So I think that concludes the pros and cons on the various publishing approaches. So I want to pause for just a moment because I know we're buzzing through this content really fast. So if you have any questions or want some additional clarification as it relates to those three publishing options, I'm happy to take a look at those in the chat. Otherwise, I have a few key ideas that I want to leave you with. So one thing that I know to be true, having launched over 150 books in 9 years, no matter how you choose to publish, whether traditional or hybrid or self-publishing, you as the author will always need to be the chief marketing officer for your book. And what this means basically is that you own responsibility for consistently showing up to market your book, to raise awareness for the book. You as the Chief Marketing Officer get to decide how to use your most precious resources of time, energy, and money to share your book with the world. But it really all comes back to you as the author. Now, with the various choices, when you partner with a publisher often has resources and best practices that they can share. They're going to cheer you on because they want you to be successful in marketing your book, but ultimately the author is responsible for implementing marketing. No one is going to market your book for you, unless of course you hire us. We'd be happy to help. At any rate, you have to make some choices there. It's either going to be your time or your energy or your money that are going to fund the marketing journey to help get the reach that you want for your book. And I think that's good news and bad news, right? So if you're the author and you're the chief marketing officer, that gives you a lot of control and choice. So the next thing that I know to be true, no matter what your publishing approach is that the sooner you prepare to market a book by building connections and contacts, the more effective your marketing will be. And perhaps you've heard me say this, I've been building online presence since 2009. One of these days I will bring a book to market, and I have been preparing this whole time. So if you are an aspiring author, if the timeline on your book coming to market is unclear, you want to take advantage of the time that you have to build as much marketing collateral in advance as you can. And the best way to do that is to add value to others, because the sooner you begin to prepare, the more effective you'll be when your book comes to market. Here's something else I know to be true. No matter whether you choose traditional publishing or hybrid publishing or self-publishing, the entire journey will require more time, money, and energy than you expect. Without fail, I know this to be true. If you are an author who has brought a book to market, I would love to hear an amen in the chat, if that's appropriate, or yeah, that's right. It all takes more time, money, and energy than you expect. Thank you, Denise. I can always count on you. So the last thing I want to say is that it helps to have a why or a purpose that's bigger than selling books. That why or purpose will fuel your energy on the journey. And for every author, there's likely a story behind why writing a book matters to them, what they want the book to achieve. And if we can stay connected to that bigger purpose in the world, we will be way more effective with our efforts. So I buzzed through that fast. We have about 5 minutes left. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Sean, for agreeing with me on this idea that it's going to take more time, money, and energy than you expect. So before we end, I do have another poll, and we've talked today about 3 different approaches to publishing, and I'd love to know, so after listening to the pros and cons, or maybe whatever knowledge you brought to the call today, what do you think your preferred approach to publishing might be? And I'm curious to hear what you have to say. I am not sadly able to answer this poll myself as the presenter, and I don't want to sway anyone's opinion, so I will wait until the poll is over. So thanks to those of you who are answering. I'm going to give you a couple more seconds. So if you did answer with a strong opinion on one of these approaches more than another, I'd love to know in the chat why you gave the answer that you gave. And I'll close up this poll and show you the results. So it looks like overwhelmingly on this call, half of you think that hybrid publishing is the preferred approach for you. A third of you think self-publishing might be the best approach for you, and slightly under 20% say traditional publishing. So curious if you answered with one of those options, what the reason is for. And Nancy's noting that she has a new and much deeper appreciation for every book on her bookcases after being halfway through writing her first draft. Patricia says she's worried about the cost of traditional or hybrid. Hybrid because it gets the book out quicker with some support. Sean says self-published in 2019. Let's see, I can't quite see the chat. Has worked well. Next book will be hybrid for many reasons. So thank you for sharing that, Sean. So just a couple of things. Great to hear, Tess, that you have enough vavoom to fuel your why. What a great perspective. I love it. All right. So, oh, I forgot one. I had one more important tip. So professional editing and production do matter, and people do judge books by their covers. So Chris says he would suggest traditional or hybrid for a new author with more experience. Self-publishing is viable, and Chris loves the total control of his work. So Nancy is asking about our services, and I will get there, but today I do want to highlight one service in particular that may be of interest to you. So I mentioned that Weaving Influence is not a publisher, but we do have book production services available. So these 4 books represent 4 of the books that we have produced, and production is similar to a hybrid publisher, except that you completely own and retain control of and all of the work. So our team is mostly being the hands for you on final proofread, in the page design and the cover design. So if you're interested or looking for some support to self-publish your book, we can provide that service. We've done a few books, and this is just a small slice of the work that my team and I do in the world. Our core offering is around marketing, and we are a full service digital marketing agency, and we specialize in supporting authors in launching their books. So just really quickly before we wrap up our time together, this is just a view of the many books that we've launched in the past 9 years. It looks like we have 8 years worth of book launches here. I don't think we have our poster for 2020 yet. I would always welcome you to reach out to me at any time if we can talk about supporting you as you pursue your dream of publishing a book. Here's something that others say about our webinars. There are always new and interesting perspectives shared, keeping me up to date on the latest trends. Our next free webinar on marketing is about social media. I'm hoping that I can convince my colleague, Christy Kirk, to present to you. She's an amazing social strategist. So we hope you will register for the upcoming webinar. And I always welcome you to connect with me in all the various places. We do have a book marketing course available. It's called the Book Marketing Action Guide, and we have a podcast. And you can find out more about everything that we do at weavinginfluence.com. You can see the course at courses.weavinginfluence.com. And I would always welcome a text or a phone call. Although, to be honest, I don't really answer the phone, but I'll call you back if I can. I prefer to schedule a call, so definitely, send me an email to set something up if you would like to talk personally. But here's all my contact info. We will be sending out this slide deck after the call, and you'll be able to get all the notes on the various pros and cons that we discussed today. So thanks, have a fantastic day, and thank you always for joining us on our webinars.